Okay, Triple E and instrumentation students who are on the second link, you can shift to the first link because there are only 180 people in the first link. Okay, so you can shift there, right? There are only 180 people there. If you want, you can shift there. If you want to stay here only, that is also fine. Both are okay, right? Okay. I'm already starting my presentation. Please note that the recordings will be shared or not. That decision will be taken at a later point of time, because the point is that we don't want students to reduce their attendance just because the recordings are available. Okay, so we are already seeing that people are reducing just because the recordings are available and all those things. Okay, so whether recordings will be made available or not, we can actually we will have to figure out, right? So right now, don't expect that after the class you will get the recording straight away. Okay, right, let's begin it. Today we have to go at a little brisk pace, right? Okay, so last class we were looking at this thing, that we had different kinds of instructions, because of which we had different kinds of and the size of the instructions will vary accordingly, right? So the size of the instruction will vary accordingly. Okay, so what happens is, because instruction size varies, okay, so if variable size of instructions happen, if the size of the instruction becomes variable, like for example, what we were saying is, for if the operands were only memory based locations only, then the instruction size will be very very long. If the instructions contained only registers like this, okay, the size of the instruction will be small. Okay, what will be the size, we will be seeing at a later point of time when we come to 8086 based instructions. So what happens is, as the size of the instruction varies, a variable size of instruction makes the decoding of the instruction complicated, and therefore instruction decoder becomes complicated. Okay, so based on the type of architecture, instruction set architecture that you have, there are two kinds of instruction set architectures, that is called as CISC and RISC. Okay, CISC means complex instruction set architecture, instruction set computer. Okay, complex instruction set computer. Whereas on the contrary, you have reduced instruction set computer. Okay, so the difference is that in CISC, okay, the size of the instructions will vary. Okay, there will be variable size of instruction in CISC. Okay, and the operands, that means the data which is required for an instruction to execute, like for example, in this case, the operands are M3, M1 and M2. Okay, in this case, the operand is A, M1, M2. Okay, so whether the operands in this case CISC, okay, can be either register or memory location. Okay, and the instructions can be arithmetic or logic operation. Okay, however, in RISC, what happens is, the operands will be register only. Okay, so it will operate on the registers only. So then one may ask that, if the data is present in the memory, then what we will be doing? If I want to operate on some data which is there on the memory, then what you will be doing? In RISC, first you load the instructions into the register and then operate on the register. Load the instructions into the register and then operate on the register. And that is why, and because the logical or arithmetic operation is finally on the registers only, it is sometimes called as register architecture. Okay, is sometimes called as register architecture. Okay, so because of this difference, what happens is, okay, suppose you have an instruction. Let us say that I want to multiply a memory location A with multiply with the memory location B and put back into memory. Okay, so CISC can do it in one single instruction. Okay, let us say I have mul C comma A comma B. Okay, so it will multiply A and B and put it in C. Let us say that. Okay, so I can do it in a single instruction in RISC. However, if I have to do it in let us say if I want to do it in RISC architecture, first I have to load it into a register A, load B into a register, and then multiply R0 and R1 and put it back into, let us say this is C. Okay, store the instruction in C. Okay. Okay, so I will take more number of instructions in RISC compared to CISC. Okay, why? Because in RISC you are only allowed to have register operation. Multiplications is possible only on registers. Only two instructions. That is, if you want to store or load into a load from, if you want to load a data from the memory, you can do a load operation. If you want to store into a memory location, you can do a store operation. Other than this, all the arithmetic and logical operations. Okay, logical operations means and, or, XOR, like that, those kind of operations, and multiply, add, subtract, and all those things, the arithmetic and logic operations are possible only on the registers. Okay, now the another important feature of RISC is that because it is a register operation, that is, if that is the operation is possible only on the register. Okay, so the instructions size will remain constant or fixed. Okay, because always it is a multiply or an add or a subtract or a division or some arithmetic or logic operation on two registers. I know the registers size is same, or sorry, the operands are registers only always, and therefore the size of the instructions remains constant in RISC, because of which the decoding in RISC becomes simple. Okay, but on the other hand, in CISC, what happens is, because the operands can be either memory or registers or a combination of registers and memories, so variable sizes are possible. Therefore, the decoding of the instruction becomes very complicated in the case of CISC. Okay, and therefore the issues are there. But however, CISC, what happens is the code density reduces. The number of instructions required to perform a same operation, okay, same operation will reduce. The code length will reduce in the case of CISC. In the RISC, the code length will increase. However, in CISC, because of the complex instructions, the compiler, that is the software which is required to convert a instruction into its binary format. We were seeing last class that I have to convert the instruction into a binary format so that the processor can understand. So the compiler will become very complicated, and even the implementation of the decoder will become complicated because of variable address formats and all those things, right? And another feature of CISC is, because of the complex instructions that are there, okay, this, I'll just mention a point without delving more details into this. So each instruction in CISC is divided into very sub instructions internally. Okay, so this is called as a micro instructions. In CISC, each instruction is internally divided into sub instructions, okay, which are called as a micro instructions. Okay, so though you say multiply C comma A comma B, it is not done at once. It is done step by step internally in the processor, which are called as a micro instructions. Okay, So that is how it is done, and therefore the implementation of the processor becomes complicated in the case of CISC. Okay, so implementation becomes very complicated in the case of CISC. Okay, so it will have some micro instructions inside it and other things. Okay, however, the code length reduces, and there are other important aspects of this. Okay, another thing that we need to understand is generally the time taken to execute a program. Okay, the time taken to execute a program can be divided into the three steps or three terms. Okay, how many time divided by a program will, let us say a program contains, say program will contain, let us say, some n number of instructions. Okay, so n instructions. Okay, now each of the instructions, okay, can will take some amount of time to execute. Okay, so that is measured in terms of the cycles. Okay, how many clock cycles will it take, which will each of the instruction take. Okay, but what is the time per clock cycle, that is also different. Okay, so number of the time which you take to execute a program will be the time you take to execute n instructions. Okay, and each instruction will have different clock cycles. Okay, so it will depend on this, the time per instruction, okay, will be equal to the time per it will depend on the cycles that each of the instruction takes. Okay, now this internally cycles per instruction, the cycles will depend on the time taken to per instruction will now again depend on the number amount of time each cycle takes. Okay, so therefore you can split this time per program as time per cycle multiplied by cycles per instruction multiplied by instructions per program. Let us say if I have n instructions, so it will be n, this value will be n instructions per program multiplied by how many, what cycles each instruction takes, multiplied by the time per cycle. Okay, so now let us say if I have a clock of, if I have the microprocessor, we have seen last class that each processor will be taking a clock. Okay, the clock will be say 5 megahertz or whatever it is. Okay, so that means the time taken per each clock pulse will be 1 over 5 into 10 power 6. Okay, 5 megahertz means what? This will be this many number of the clock, the time period will be this many number of seconds. Okay, so the time per cycle will be this much, 1 over 5 over 6, 5, and let us say whatever is the cycle, number of cycles per instruction. If let us say if the instructions number of cycles per instruction is say 4. Okay, so each instruction takes 4 cycles to execute, let us say that. Okay, so then the time per program will be 1 over 5 over 6, that is the clock, that is the time period of each cycle, multiplied by this 4 multiplied by n. So this will be the time per program, right? So the RISC will, what it will do is it will try to reduce the number of cycles per instruction. Okay, it wants to keep the number of cycles per instruction constant and minimal or optimal, you let us say that. Okay, however, it will increase the number of instructions per program, as we have seen in the previous case. It will take RISC is taking 4 instructions, whereas CISC is taking only 1 instruction. Okay. However, here in CISC, what it tries to do is it tries to increase or reduce the number of instructions per program. As you see here, it took only 1 instruction to do the multiplication operation, right? So Optimally, what we want to do is we want to execute one instruction per cycle optimally, or that is the aim. Every cycle I want to execute an instruction, or I want to complete complete one instruction per cycle. However, that is not possible. So sometimes you take more number of cycle, or you will take more cycles per instruction. Okay, so there are different techniques. We will not get into this. Generally, we will use different techniques like pipelining and replication to try to increase the speed up, increase the speed of the execution of the instructions. Okay, pipelining basically means that I'll just touch upon this. Pipelining basically means in each instruction I can divide. Last time we were telling that. Okay, we can divide in each instruction into fetch. I fetch the instruction from the memory. I decode the instruction, what is the instruction is meant to do, and then I execute the instruction. Fetch, decode, and execute each instruction. See, I'm going at a little brisk pace, but I will come up and take some doubts on this on Monday's class. But I'll go little brisk pace today, right? So if there are three instructions here, normal instruction, what it will do? Instruction fetch, first instruction is instruction fetch, and then instruction decode, and then instruction execute. First instruction. Then instruction fetch, instruction decode, and instruction execute of the second instruction. Okay, and then third instruction fetch, instruction decode, and instruction execute. Okay, three instructions. This is 9 cycles generally it takes. Okay, what happens if I do a pipelining is I will try to, what I will do is I will execute, I will, when I'm decoding the first instruction, I will fetch the second instruction, like I was telling last time. Okay, when the execution unit is doing some execution, I try to do the fetching of the next instruction. So that's what I will be doing here. Okay, so while it is decoding, I'll do the instruction fetch of second instruction. Okay, while instruction execute of first instruction is happening, the second instruction will be in a decode phase, while third instruction will be in the fetch phase. Okay, and when second instruction is in execute phase, it will, the third instruction will be in decode. Okay, and then finally the third instruction will execute. Okay, so it will take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cycles to execute all the 3 instructions instead of 9 cycles in normal non-pipelined processor. Okay, I repeat, first instruction fetch. Okay, then it will do instruction decode. While instruction decode is happening, instruction fetch of second instruction is happening parallelly, simultaneously. Okay, while first instruction is being executed, it will decode the second instruction, and it will also fetch the third instruction. And while the second instruction is being executed, it will decode the third instruction, and finally instruction execute of the third instruction will happen. Okay, fourth and fifth instruction, if they are there, that will also be happening simultaneously. But the thing is that you have 5 cycles happening. In 5 cycles, if I can I can complete all the 3 instructions instead of 9 cycles in normal non-pipeline instructions. Okay, there are other ways to do it. I can have multiple execution units simultaneously. This is called as a VLIW architecture, very long instruction word. So each instruction will internally compose of 3 instructions. I'll just touch upon this word. I'll not explain what is this. Okay, and we can also have what is known as a superscalar architecture also. We'll not touch about this. This will become little too much for the first degree course, right? I'll just come to the final thing, the microprocessor family architecture. Okay, so 8086, which is the processor that we will be studying, okay, that is composed, or that has, we were talking about the data bus width and execute the instruction lines and all those things last time. Okay, we were talking about the data bus, address bus, control lines, etc. last time. Okay, for 8086, for 8086, you will be having 16 data lines. Data bus is having 16 bit, whereas the address bus is 20 bits. Okay, because it has an address bus of 20 bits, it can address a memory of 1 megabytes or 1 mega memory, or the size of the memory is 1 mega. Now the memory is 1 megabytes or more. That depends on the whether the memory size, the memory is having is storing 1 byte in each location or more than 1 byte in each location. That depends on the memory. However, it can address 1 mega memory, right? Okay, so that is what we have. On the other hand, there is a processor called as 8088, which is a version of 8086, but with 8 bits of data lines. Okay, so eight data bits, 20 address lines, and 1 mega size memory it can address, because again address bus is 1 mega. 80186 is 16, 20, and 1 mega again. 80286 80286 is 16, 24, 24 bits of address lines. Because 24 bits of address lines, so what will be the address that it can address? That will become 2 power 24. Okay, last time we have talked about this. What will be the address lines, and therefore the memory, how you calculate, right? So the memory size will be 2 power 24. Okay, so if it is 2 power 24, that will become 16 mega. Okay, 80386 has different versions: 80386 SX, DX, and EX. Okay, so SX has 24 address lines, DX has 32 address lines, and 386 has 26 address lines. Okay, therefore its address lines will change. 80486 will have 32 bits of data bus, 32 bits of address bus, and therefore 4 giga address lines it can have. It can address a memory of 4 giga, 2 power 32. Okay, last time we talked 2 power 10 bytes, or 2 power 10 locations one make 1 kilo locations, or 1 kilobyte or 1 kilo locations. 2 power 10 kilo locations will make how much? 1 mega locations. Oh, so 1 mega will be equal to 2 power 10 multiplied by 2 power 10, right? So 2 power 10 is equal to 1 kilo. 2 power 10 kilo is equal to 1 mega. 2 power 10 mega will be equal to 1 giga. Okay, so if you replace mega by this and kilo by this, so 1 giga will be equal to 2 power 30, right? Okay, so that's how it shows. And therefore, if you look at Pentium Itanium processor, it has 40 address lines. Therefore, it can address 1 tera, right? Okay, so fine. Let us now go to the other part of the thing, that is, okay, which is called as a programmer's model. Okay, right. Right. Isn't it that number of bits stored in one address location is equal to data bus width? No, it need not be. It need not be. There was a question that uh, it isn't that the number of bits stored in one address location equal to the data bit? No. For example, 8086 has 16 data lines. However, it can be connected to a memory which is having 1 byte in each location, right? Okay. So we do we need to know all values of data and address lines? No, it's a mention to you. Okay. Anyways, your all the components are open book. Okay. However, you need to know what is meant by how you need to know what is the size of 8086, 80286, at least 80386 to some extent, and 80486 you should know, right? You should know this. You will be knowing it once you do it. We'll be touching upon it. How did we multiply the data bus? How do we multiply the data bus when calculating the memory? Please look at the last lecture, right? Okay, let's go to the next aspect. So we were looking at we want to see the programmer's model. What do you mean by a programmer's model? So we this is what we have seen as we have I've talked about all these things. 8086 has 20 address lines, so it can address 1 megabytes of memory. Okay, 2 megabytes of memory. So generally it is byte organized. Memory is byte organized. That's why I say it is 1 megabytes, and it can execute 2.5 million instructions per second. Okay, this is the speed of the processor is mentioned here by this 2.5 million instructions per second. Okay, 10 power 6 instructions per second. So it can execute 2.5 into 10 power 6 instructions per second. So that is the speed. This is a notation of the speed, how many instructions per second it can execute. We have looked at the time per program, right? From that we get that how many instructions you can actually have. So it can execute 2.5 into 10 power 6 instructions per second, whereas 286 has 24 address lines, 4 mega instruction, 4 MIPS. Okay, 386, this is one version of a version of 386. Okay, a version of 386 which has 32 address lines, so it can address 4 gigabits of memory. Okay, bytes of memory. And 486 can also address 4 gigabits of bytes of memory, and it also have floating point unit. It also has internal cache, and it can execute 50 million instructions per second. Okay, so as I've talked, 8086 is actually a CISC architecture which has a variable instructions sizes, and each instruction is composed of what is known as a micro operations. Okay, which I have talked already. So it has a very complex instruction decoder. Okay, so how does 8086 actually look like? Okay, so we have talked last class about the bus interface unit and the execution unit. Okay, so we were talking about there are some registers in the we that was a generic destruction in generic you can say it was a generic discussion. Okay, this block diagram specifically talks about 8086. Okay, in the execution unit. Okay, so you have the ALU. Okay, you have the registers, you have what is known as the operands and flags. We'll look at what in a slow way. Okay, the bus interface unit. Okay, so it will basically we just told program address generator. We just talked about said that in the last class. But how does it actually do it? Okay, we'll look at it in the same way. Okay, slowly. Okay, so what happens is, okay, so the bus interface unit, okay, will be composed of certain registers. Okay, so now let us come back to this block diagram in a short while. Okay, first I will let you introduce what are the instructions which are, sorry, the registers which are there in 8086. Okay, 8086 will have 20 address lines, as I've told, which will be named as A0 to A19. Okay, it will have 20 address lines, which will be named A0 to A19. Data bus will have 16 address lines, which I've already said. So they will be denoted by D0 to D19. They will be named by D0 to D15, sorry. D0 to D15. Okay. So that will be the data bus. This will be the address bus. Okay. So because you have 19 address lines, okay. So the address lines can vary from all being 0000, which we in hexadecimal, I put it as 00000H, to the final address location will be 1111 and so on till 1, which is FFFFH in hexadecimal. Okay, so the starting address location is 00000H and final address location is FFFFH, right? So this total will become 1 megabytes, which is memory locations. Again, generally we address a byte addressable memory, therefore we have a 1 megabyte of memory. Okay, so 1 megabyte will be equal to 2 power 20, so which will be equal to 2 power 10 into 2 power 10, which will be equal to 1 megabyte. Mega, and generally you have a byte address locations, and therefore you have 1 megabyte. Okay, so what are the BIU is responsible for fetching the instruction, and execution unit is responsible for executing the instruction. We'll come back to that diagram in a short while. But before that, let me first introduce you to the registers that you have. Okay, so bus interface unit, okay, will have, first of all, it will have four main registers called as a CS, code segment register. Okay, this is a code segment register, okay, which is given by CS. Okay, and you also have data segment register, and you have extra segment register, and you have stack segment registers. Okay, this all these four registers will be part of your bus interface unit. Okay, apart from these registers, you will also have FS and GS. These are part of higher processors like 80486. Okay, so they are not present in 8086, not present in 8086. FS and GS, right? CS, DS, ES, and SS. CS means code segment, DS means data segment, ES means extra segment, SS means stack segment. So these four set of registers, they are present in the bus interface unit. Apart from that, you have what is known as the instruction pointer. Okay, instruction pointer. So this is also part of your bus interface unit. Okay, so instruction pointer, this is of 16 bits. Okay, this is a 16-bit register. Okay, the function of the instruction pointer, as the name suggests, is it will point to a particular instruction. Okay, it will tell where the instruction is located. Okay, of course, instruction pointer on its own will not tell, or standalone, it will not tell whether where the address is, where the instruction is located. It will be combined with the code segment register to tell where is the position of the instruction to be fetched. Okay, where is the position of the instruction to be fetched? So CS combined with IP will tell the next instruction which has to be executed. Okay, the next instruction which is to be executed will be okay. So that will be pointed, or that address will be present in CS plus IP. Okay, so how does it tell? Okay, all these instructions, but before that, let us look at the size of these segment registers. All these segment registers, they are all 16-bit registers. Okay, they are all 16-bit registers. Even ES and FS, even FS and GS, they are also 16-bit registers. Okay, so these, they will be combined, and they have a certain purpose. We will tell about that. Okay, apart from this, in higher processors like 80486 and 80386, the 32-bit processor, 32-bit version will have this EIP, which is called as extended IP, instruction pointer. So this will be present in the higher processors, 80486, 80386. They will have 16 extra bits to tell your instruction. This is also 16 bits, so that will also be present in the higher processor. But instruction pointer is the main register which will be present in 8086 processor. Okay, so how do I actually use instruction pointer? Okay, as I've told, code segment register is a 16-bit register. Okay, instruction pointer is also a 16-bit register. Okay, so using these two, I will tell what is the instruction physical address location of the instruction where I have to get the next instruction, or where the next instruction has to be executed, from where the next instruction will be there, which will be executed. Okay, let us say I'm executing an instruction, let us say instruction 1. Okay, I'm executing that instruction. Okay, so where will the second instruction be? Okay, where will instruction 2 be? That will be mentioned when at this location. When instruction 1 is being executed, the CS and IP together will tell what will be the address location of instruction 2. Right? And when instruction 2 is being executed, CS and IP together will tell where will be the next instruction, that is instruction 3. Okay, but how will CS and IP in combination will give the physical location of the next instruction? How do they give it? Okay, the way they will give it is, let us look at it with the help of an example. Let us say the content of my code segment register is 2000H. Okay, and my IP is 3000H. Let us say that. Okay, now what I will do is CS will be now multiplied by 16 decimal, that is 16 base 10. Okay, I will multiply CS with 16 base 10, that is decimal 16. Okay, and then add IP to it. Okay, so 16 base 10, okay, is nothing but shifting your 16 base 10 in hexadecimal will be how much? 10H. Okay, so in effect, this will be nothing but shift CS by 4 bits to the left. Okay, by adding a zero padding. Okay, so 2000 multiplied by 10H will become 20,000H. Okay, so 20,000H plus 3000 will become 23,000H. Okay, so this will be the physical location of the next instruction, physical address of the next instruction to be executed. I repeat, code segment registers content multiplied by 10, okay, plus IP value, that is instruction pointer value, which is called as an offset address. Okay, so this is called as a base address. The code segment is called as, in this case, the base address will be provided by the code segment register. Instruction pointer will give you the offset location, offset address. Okay, so code segment multiplied by 10h, which is nothing but shifting by 4 bits left, okay, plus 3000 will tell you that 23,000h. This will be the physical address of the physical address location of the next instruction to be fetched. Okay. So apart from the code segment register, CS register, okay, we will also have other registers here that I have told here. Okay, let us come to what are the other registers that you have here. Okay, so you have, apart from the code segment registers that you have here, okay, so you have other registers which are part of your programmer's model. Okay, so what are those instructions? Let us come to that. You have these registers called as AX, which is called as an accumulator. You have BX, which is called as a base index register. Okay, CX, which is a count register. DX, which is a data register. Okay, these are some names which are given. However, some are they can be used for other names also. So these are called as the multi-purpose registers. Apart from that, you have SP, which is called as a stack pointer. BP, base pointer. SI, source index register. DI, destination index register. So all these registers will be part of your execution unit, right? AX, accumulator. BX, base index register. CX, count register. DX, data register. SP, stack pointer. BP, base pointer. SI, source index register. Okay, so all these registers will be part of your basically they are part of your execution unit. Okay, so all these are called as a multi-purpose registers: AX, BX, CX, DX, BP, DI, and SI. Okay, AX, BX, CX, DX, ABCD, BP, DI, and SI. The instruction pointer, which was part of your BIU, okay, the stack pointer, SP, flags, CS, DS, SS, and ES, that is the segment registers that we have seen a while ago. All these are called as special purpose registers. Okay, all these are called as special purpose register. Why they are called so? We'll see it in a while. Okay, now the multi-purpose registers that we have seen, that is AX, BX, CX, and DX. Okay, all these are 16-bit registers. All these are 16-bit registers. These are also 16-bit registers. Okay. Okay. And AX is internally composed of AH and AL. AH means high. AL is the lower 8 bits. Lower 8 bits are the AL register and upper high bits are the AH register. BX is composed of BH and BL. Higher 8 bits, most significant 8 bits are the BX register, BH register, and BL register. Okay. they are all part of bx only. So bx internally, okay, let us say this is bx register. So internally it will be composed of bh and bl. So 0 to 15, okay, this is 8 and 7. The first 8 bits are bl register and next 8 bits are bh register. Similarly for ax. Similarly for cx, ch and cl, dx is also composed of dh and dl, right? Okay, dh and dl. For the higher processors, that is 32-bit processors, okay, you also have the higher 16 bits as EAX. Okay, this is for the 32-bit processor, that is 80386 32-bit version and 80486. And how other 32-bit processor, you have EAX, extended AX, extended BX, extended CX, extended DX, and extended BP, extended SI, extended DI, and extended SP. You have these extended registers further, right? Okay. Now, the way each of these registers, they combine with specific segment registers to provide a concept called as segmentation. I'll tell you what is meant by segmentation in a while. Okay. So as I've told some time ago, the CS register will combine with instruction pointer register, and it will tell you what, it will help you get access to the instruction address space. Okay, it will tell you where the next instruction is located. Okay, the SS, okay, stack segment register combined with SP or BP, that is a stack pointer or the base pointer. Okay, they will help you access a segment called as a stack segment. What is a stack segment? We will see in a while. Okay, SS plus SP plus BP, stack segment register plus SP plus BP, in combination with SP and BP, will help you address the stack address or stack segment, stack address. DS along with BX or DI or SI, they will help you access the data segment or access some data from the which is stored in a relevant data segment. ES along with DI, in combination with DI, they will try help you access a string destination address. Okay, how they will combine is the same way CS has combined with DI, that is CS multiplied by 10 H plus IP will give you the physical location of the instruction. Okay, similarly SS with 10H plus SP or BP will help you address the stack segment. Similarly for DS multiplied by 10H. We'll take examples for this. Please don't worry that it is going fast and like that. We'll take examples which will make things clearer. Okay, so ES multiplied by 10H plus DI will give you an address of the in the string destination address which is there in the extra segment register. Okay, right. So this kind of thing, that is, I split the address into some base address which is present in either CS or DS or SS or ES, and an offset address which is present in a relevant address location, which is relevant register which is there here. Okay, that is the address that I've told is SP, BP. These are called as the offset registers. These are called as the segment registers. Okay, these are called as the segment registers, as I've told: code segment, stack segment, data segment, extra segment. Okay, and these are called as offset addresses. So the way of splitting the thing into two parts is called as a segmentation. Okay, This concept is called as the segmentation. Okay. So by this, what will happen is one advantage I will mention and I will leave it. Okay. The way the advantage that you get by dividing the physical address into two parts, that is the segment register and the offset part, will help you do a relocation. Okay. So let us say that tomorrow that let us say a set of program is starting at 10,000 H. That is 00000H. This is the program. Tomorrow I want to change this to another location, okay, starting with 8000H. I want to shift it. I want to I want to or I want to actually access a program which is there from here. Let us say this set of instructions are there which have moved from here to here. Okay. If I don't have this segmentation thing, I have to change all the addresses. I have to change all the addresses wherever I want to access. So when I was accessing an address location 10,000 H, now I have to change it to 8,000, 80,000 H. Okay, so all 10,001 H has to be changed to 80,001 H and so on. Okay, but if you are moving this set of instructions from here to here, if I use a concept of segmentation, if I just change the value of CS value, that is code segment register value, okay, I can access all the instructions here. Okay, if the instructions moved from here to here, okay, if I just change CS value, I can access all the new instructions also, or the instructions in the newer location also. Why? Because code segment previously was 1000 H. Now it has to be changed to 8000 H. If I just change this, I can access the whole segment. Okay. So that is how you can actually do it. Okay. So this was one advantage that I mentioned. We will continue from here. Okay. So we will revise some of the concepts. I went little fast. I agree that. So, but we will revise some of the concepts to make it clearer or to make things smooth in the next class. Right. If you have any queries, we can look at that. Otherwise, it's the end of the class. Right.
So please upload slides so that we can revise those.
See, the point is that the decision is a combined decision. What is happening is we are providing the videos. Okay, when we provide the videos, you see what is happening. First class, the attendance is 360. Second class, the attendance is 300. Today, the maximum attendance that I found is 200. Okay, so attendance is reduced. Attendance is reducing if we are providing videos. So that is why we will take. I'm not saying we will not provide a video, but we will not provide it immediately.
Okay, sir, I completely understand it. But even for someone like me who comes to our lectures, it's impossible to take all the notes. So slides, at least try to share, sir, because I cannot write fast enough.
Right. I don't. Right. I expect that. I don't expect that you write everything here. So I'll take up this point. We'll discuss it in the meeting, and then we will get it. Okay, we'll get back to you. We'll discuss this aspect of some students are also putting the issue that they have difficulty. Sometimes it becomes difficult to follow. So a lot of people watch videos on their own pace, right? And there's also network issues. So fine, we will discuss it and we'll take a decision. So but don't expect that you will have a recordings, and so don't take the privilege that okay, I can miss the class today. Okay, so we will look at it, we'll discuss that thing in a meeting, and we'll come out with a decision. Okay, so but don't expect that the lecture will be provided immediately after the class. We need some time to discuss, and then we will take a decision and we'll let you know also, right? Okay.
So I had a doubt in the last slide which you showed.
The segmentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In this one, like
What's
suppose
your,
if we want
sorry, may I know your name?
Sumuk.
Sumuk. Sumuk, I hope you don't have a class immediately.
No, sir.
Okay, fine. Is there anybody who has a doubt and he has a class immediately?
Sir, I have a doubt in this advantages of
Okay,
segmentation.
but you have a class immediately?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So the point is that what do you mean by this is segmentation. So previously, as I've told here, 2000 colon 3000 H. Okay. So you understood how I calculated this address, physical address, right? Is it right? Yes or no?
Yes, yes, sir.
Right. So now tomorrow, an instruction which was located at 2000 colon 3000 H, 23,000 H, let us say that has now, let us say it has changed to 83,000 H. It has been moved. I have relocated it. Means your address has changed. Let us say you were living in plot number 20, some XYZ colony, whatever, Noida or whatever it is. Okay. Now from plot number 20, you have changed to plot number 80. Let us say that. Okay. So now all your whatever addresses, whatever mails that were coming to you, now they have to be redirected. Okay. They have to be redirected. Okay. So everywhere you have to change your addresses. So same thing here. Everywhere I have to change my addresses. Instead of changing everywhere, okay, if I accept just to change my CS location from 2000 to 8000 H, so what will happen is I will automatically land up in 83,000 H. I will automatically land up what was previously 23,001 H. Now I'll automatically land up to 83,001 H. Okay. So that relocation will become very easy if you do the segmentation. I just have to change the segment register, only specify the offset. You need not specify your segment address. The segment CS or DS or ES or SS will take care of your the providing the segment address, so that the whole address, the full address can be calculated, right? So relocation becomes very easy, right?
Yes, sir. That makes sense. Got it.
Right. Sumuk, what was your even your query is clarified, Sumuk?
Yes, sir, to a good extent, but I still have to ask something. Suppose if a program it starts from like 23,000 and ends at 23,500 H,
Okay.
and and suppose now it is relocated. I mean, the program has been moved from 23,600 to something like it's between 23,000 cap only. It is not going into 24,000.
No. That is like changing. See, now that is the change. That is the changing of within a particular segment. Okay, that is within a particular segment. We'll look at it.
Okay, sir.
The case that you are saying is within the segment you are saying. What is the
Yes,
case?
sir. Yes, sir.
So that will be different. In that case, yeah, there you can't avoid. But if you are changing from one segment to another segment, okay, so there you will have this advantage because you need not actually specify the whole address. You can just specify the offset. Now the case that you are telling is your offset itself is changing.
Yes, sir.
Offset itself is changing. That is a different case. However, there is a way to do that also. I'll tell you that part also. In that way is like, for example, 23,000 H from 23,500 to, let us say, it is changing to 23,600. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
one way you can do it is that you can change your code segment from what is that? 2,500. Let us say that 20 or 23 2050 to 2060. Let us say that. Then it will happen. Then you will be able to do it. Okay. How 2050, if it was there, that will become 20500, okay, plus 3000 will become 23,500 H. Okay. Now I change this to 2060. That will become 2060. 00 plus 3000. Okay, so that will become 23,600 H. So that also can be done. Okay, but there are certain implications because of this. What will be the implications? We'll look at it. Okay, if I don't have all the three nibbles, last three nibbles are 0, then what is the implication? We will see. Right?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
What's possible? Right. Any other query? Anybody else?
Sure.
Yeah, you can tell your name and then we can discuss the doubt.
My name
Sorry?
is Shank. Shank.
Shank. Okay. Yes.
So my doubt is that why are we changing only the segment and not the offset to change the location?
The point is not to change the location. The point is that let us say that a segment has moved from one segment to, sorry, a set of instructions have changed from one segment to another segment. That is the case that we are looking. Okay.
Yeah.
Given chunk of instructions have changed from one location to another location, then by using the concept of segmentation, what can happen is I can actually undo, or I can remove this burden of changing all the instructions in the program by actually just mentioning the offset. Okay. So by this, what will happen is if I just specify the offset inside the program and I don't specify the segment value, code segment or data segment value, what will happen is I will actually be, I need not change the whole program's the address specified inside the instructions of the whole program. Are you getting it?
Sir, yeah, I got that. Like we are using some kind of a relative positioning, right, of the instruction.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, like I meant to ask that if we are keeping the offset constant and changing the segment base address, why can't we do it the other way around? That keep the segment constant and change the offset.
Yeah, the point is that the reason being that it will become clearer when you actually get into the programs. When you go to the programs, what happens actually is, I think I'll keep this question for the next class. Okay, that will become clearer. One short answer that I would give you is generally we change the offsets, not the segments. Okay, code segment and offset segment. You generally change the offset. Suppose if I want to go from one location to another location, I want to just go to the next location.
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of going from the next, let us say you have an instruction at 23,000 H. Okay. If we want to go to the next location, how do you get it? 23,001 H.
Yeah.
Okay. If I want to change that through the code segment, will that be possible?
I don't think so. Maybe
No, it will not be possible.
Yeah.
It will not be. Think na. See, if I want to go from 23,000 H to 23,001 H, okay. If I increment the value of CS, what will happen? It will become 2001, 2001 H. So that will become
23,010, I guess. Yeah, 20,010.
Plus 10 H. क्या हो गया?
This 23,010.
You will not go to 23,001 H. है ना? So
Yeah.
that is why you have to change the offset to is the one which will be incremented if I want to go to the next location.
Yes, got it. Sir.
Okay, right?
Okay, got it.
Here the question was about relocation. Relocation ke liye we will change the CS value, right? Right.
Got it, sir.
Okay. Any other queries?
Oh, excuse me, sir.
I hope you don't have a next class.
No, sir.
Okay. Your name, please.
Aman.
Aman. Okay. I'm just asking your name so that I know who is asking the question. Otherwise, it will become like a very impersonal thing, no?
Yes, sir. So I just had to say that if not the recordings, can we at least get the slides on a regular basis? Because so recordings you can upload whenever you wish, but getting the slides on a regular basis can help us to revise the topics regularly, sir.
Okay. I will talk to the team and we'll get back to you. Right. The first two recordings are already there with you, right?
Okay, sir. So there is no problem about the recordings, but getting the slides on a regular basis will help a lot.
Right, right. You have got the recordings of first 2 lectures? Just want to ensure. Aman?
I have not seen them, but I guess
Okay,
they're
okay. But at least you have the access to it. You have not seen it.
yes,
That
yes.
that is another thing. I understand because you have all other courses also. So fine, I understand that. But at least you have got the access of that, right? Okay,
Oh,
fine.
yes.
Right. Any
Thank
other queries? Otherwise, we
Excuse
can
me, sir.
call.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Tarun.
I had a doubt. Like, while we are trying to access the next location of the instruction, we are multiplying the CS with the base address with 10H, right? Like, can you explain why are we doing so?
The reason being that I want to actually generate a see, CS is 16-bit address location and IP is also 16-bit location. Okay, if you straight away add them, it will become 5000H.
Yes, sir.
Right? But the address that I'm trying to locate is actually what I'm trying to get an address space of 1 megabyte. 1
Okay.
megabyte means 5 nibbles. Okay, I have to generate a 5 nibble address, that is 2 per 20-bit address. Okay, so that is why I multiply it with 10 so as to get a 5 nibble, that is 20-bit address.
Okay, sir. It's just like multiplying with 10, normal like 10 decimal.
Not 10 decimal, it is 10H.
Yes, sir. Like just like when we want to access the next digit in decimal numbers, we multiply by 10. We are doing it in hexadecimal.
In one sense, you can say that. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
There's also other implications of that. We'll discuss about this, other reasons for this. Okay, we'll look at that in the next class. Right. I think we
Thank
have to call it a day. I mean, we have to end the class because I have another meeting immediately. Right. So thank you.